Okay, so I'm just here to talk really briefly about immersion, right? And the fact that it isn't just something that Georgetown happens to do, or the strategy, technique, method, however you want to consider it, for APB, but it is actually that's something, a concept, an experience, an idea, an ideal that people have been thinking about, studying about, researching about for years and years and years. So I just want to give you kind of 4 very different schools of thought around immersion. And when I say different, I really mean different. Not necessarily there's differences among them, but they come from 4 very different places. Okay, this is really just to help you think about, okay, when I say immersion, what am I talking about? What is one thing out of one of these schools of thought that resonates with me, right? And that I want to build on and think more about and read more about and talk about with my trip participants or whatever. So there's kind of no right or wrong answer here. This is just kind of a landscape of immersion scholarship and thought to support you guys as you plan, conceptualize, and envision going forward. So generally speaking, immersion falls in under this really large meta umbrella that we call experiential learning. You hear experiential learning being kicked around more and more at Georgetown and in higher education. Obviously, it's something that CSJ has been involved in for a long time, and a lot of other programs at Georgetown have as well. It is not that experiential learning, that all forms of experiential learning are immersion. Obviously, that's not the case. But immersion is one type of experiential learning, right? And Harlow was in my class yesterday. We were doing a simulated focus group on experiential learning. The idea being, where is learning happening in an educational institution outside of a 4-walled classroom that involves actually doing and being involved in work in a less traditional way than we know it, right? So learning through reflection by doing. I like this quotation that's often attributed to Confucius. I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, I do and I understand. T.S. Eliot's quote gets kicked around a lot here at Georgetown, this idea that we had the experience but missed the meaning. I'm really interested in experiential learning because I have a grave fear that there is a lot of stuff going on right now in the higher ed world that is being called experiential learning, but is actually just experience. There's no actual learning from it, okay? There's no intentional conceptual thinking, there's no reflection, there's no being in community with each other. It's one reason why Gypsal knows that I created this online class this past summer called Intersections that supported students who were out in the world, Hoyas, undergrads, your peers, your friends, who were out in the world in the summer doing deep community-based and social justice-based experiences, okay? So Gypsal was in Brazil working with refugees. Kira was also in the class, was teaching English in Romania. Who else did we have? Eduardo was in San Francisco leading a Magis program. Reed was working as a counselor in a camp in Virginia Beach. Stephanie was in New York City doing a needle exchange program. I mean, we had people in like 12 different time zones. But we created this online course that was experience wrapping, that gave a structure to the students learning around the experiences that they were having, right? So again, goes back to my deep fear that we are doing a lot that's called experiential learning, but actually not learning anything from it. We're just having experiences, which to me is not an ethical way to work in the community. Is that a good way to sum up intersections? Good. So experiential learning, okay? One school of thought around immersion. Learning through reflection by doing. Anybody ever studied David Kolb, maybe psychology class, education class? It's kind of a famous educational psychologist, late 70s, early 80s. I mean, you gotta take him for what he can offer. He did most of his work with white men, and so you have to always kind of think of that as you're looking at the research. But he was interested in how college students learn. Okay, what are the phases of learning that actually college students go through? And this is what he created which I think you'll find really resonates a lot with the immersion aspect of alternative break program, okay? If you've been, I think Foshin leaders have seen this before, some other folks may have seen this depending on any other programs you've been in. The student starts here knowing something concrete, having a concrete experience, doing something, feeding somebody, building something for somebody, meeting a community-based partner, having that experience, okay? We haven't gotten to the learning part yet, but having that experience. You move here. This is obviously a huge tenet of alternative break program, the reflection. I know I don't need to talk about that because you guys spend a lot of time on that, a lot of training, and there's a lot of work that I know that you put into this, okay? But they reflect on it. Well, wait, what just happened? Who did I meet? What did that feel like to learn from this person rather than a professor? What did it feel like to meet the people who are going to live in the house where I just busted my finger hammering with a tool that I hadn't used before, right? What does it mean to like have lunch with this person, and if I hadn't showed up, may not have eaten that day, right? What is that reflection? Then that moves to this area, the abstract conceptualization, right? That is the next day, they're building on that. You're meeting another community-based partner. You're going to another part of New Orleans. You're meeting a different subpopulation in New York City, in DC, in Detroit, whatever the case may be. You're building on more of these experiences, and you're making linkages or intersections among them, okay? And then finally, you're bringing it home, right? The active experimentation. How am I going to commit to this? How is this a springboard into learning about something new and deeper? Maybe I'm going to take a class in this. Maybe I'm going to join a new student organization. Maybe I'm going to look into a new fellowship program for a postgrad option, whatever, right? And then you start all over again, okay? It's a cycle. So this is David Kolb. This is from Student Development Theory. If you really want to get into this, talk to Ray Shu in the CSJ. He knows this stuff really, really, really well, okay? Now, this is the stuff I know really well. I love higher ed, okay? People are like, oh, how did you get into the job you have now, right? I love the intersection of higher ed, higher education, and societal conflict, okay? My dissertation research was actually in the Balkans, in the former Yugoslav countries, where they were figuring out the changes they need to make in higher education in order to kind of transform out of the post-conflict society that they were living in, right? So Bosnia, for example, experienced a genocide in the mid-1990s. When I was there about 10 years later, they were figuring out how to teach a course on genocide law at the University of Sarajevo. Like this stuff, like, wow, I'm like, I get so excited about it. But how was higher ed involved in that transformation of that society out of genocide, right? Well, one way was to start teaching genocide law at the University of Sarajevo so that they had lawyers and judges and media people and police officers who were trained in order to maybe have, to hold some of the courts that had been held in the Netherlands in their own home country, for example, right? They knew more what it looked like. They had people trained to deal with what was going on in their own country. So that's the kind of stuff I love. How does higher ed respond to societal conflict? How does higher ed, make statements about Black Lives Matter? How does higher ed think about the fact that we have in some parts of DC a 40% unemployment rate, right? What does higher ed have to do with that, right? Whether it's us as an institution, a research institution, or one of community engagement, or one of service, whatever, right? So I'm interested in higher ed. So the American Association of Colleges and Universities is a large association of colleges and universities across the United States. And their President DeJoya has been, I think, chair of their board. It's a really important institution for people like me who are thinking about what does higher ed mean for our world, right? Not just to create awesome students and have awesome students, but beyond that as well. So a couple years ago, 2008 I believe, the AACU put out these high impact practices, HIPs, okay? And they put out, I believe, 8. And they're really interesting to read. And what they have done is a ton of research on what students are saying were the most meaningful parts of their undergraduate careers. Okay, and so I just chose 3 because I felt that these 3 actually lend themselves to immersion, which is amazing. Okay, so a common intellectual experience. Okay, you are going with other students on this immersion. You're being together and you are having a common experience. You are not going out on this alone. Okay? And that was something we were trying to do in Intersections this summer. Even though Kira was in Romania and Giselle was in Brazil, we were trying to create community among them in this online space. But you're having a common intellectual experience. You're not doing this alone. You're doing this with other people in their presence, right? You are a witness to their transformation. They're a witness to yours, right? You are together. That's really unique because even though we sit in these classrooms a lot, and technically you could call those common intellectual experiences, I'm not sure so much how much they are, how much classes are, right? Because I meet students who don't ever meet another student in their class, right? Who never talk to another student in their class. Maybe you're learning the same stuff, but you're not having a shared common intellectual experience. But I think with this immersion program, sorry, I keep hitting you, you are. And what I love about this program and many of other CSJ's programs, you're going to have first year, second year, juniors, seniors. You're going to have probably all 4 schools, 12 different majors, minors, 12 different hometowns in a non-competitive atmosphere. It is one of the only spaces that offers that, right? And when I talk to parents, that's something I stress about CSJ programs. That is that coming together. You're not all English majors. You're not all freshmen in the same dorm. What dorm is that? Darnell, something like that. Right? You might, a sports team often has that mix, but you're in a competitive atmosphere, which changes the rules and changes the feel of things. I'm not bashing competition, but I'm just saying it's different, right? These programs, and the immersion programs in particular, are one of those shared spaces where, that's number 2, you can build that learning community among all these kind of weird bifurcations that we create in higher ed. Years, semesters, majors, disciplines, dorms, whatever, right? You create that learning community together with a diverse group of people, okay? And then it's based in service, and it's based from learning from community, and not just what I'm doing right here now, up here being a talking head. Right? You're learning from people who don't always have that opportunity to be able to stand in front of a classroom. Right? You are learning from diverse players, not just people who have little letters after their name. Right? So those 3 things really lend themselves to this idea of immersion. So that comes from ASU. So the third one, immersion is totally the Jesuit way. Okay? Bernard Lonergan, if you haven't read any of his work, he's actually a scholar on immersion. He writes on this concept of immersion. He's a Jesuit, okay, from it being an Ignatian practice. The first Jesuits in 1500s, mid-1500s, St. Ignatius, Peter Faber, Francis Xavier, when they set out across the world, they really saw themselves as being part of immersion, right? As being part of a pilgrimage. The way he describes it is travel plus imagination plus love, right? Immersion really intersects with so many of our Ignatian values, and very much so with the important Jesuit commitment to solidarity, of not just learning from and extracting from people, but being with and learning with people, diverse people. Okay, so that's a really famous quotation from Peter Hans Kolbenbach from his speech in October 2000. If you haven't read the speech, I highly recommend it. Happy to give it to you. So those are the 4 kind of schools of thought. So just to review again, experiential learning, student development theory, high impact practices in higher education, and the Jesuit way. So when you're thinking about what your immersion experience will look like, will feel like, will be for you and for your participants and for your community members and for the larger Georgetown community, think about if any of these things resonated with you and build from there. If you want more reading or want to talk more about any of these areas, I'm happy to do so. Okay? So that all said of what immersion is, what is immersion not? I think it's important. I realize that sets up a little bit of a false binary, but I want to kind of make the point about what immersion is not. So it's not voluntourism. Anybody hear that term before? What is it? What's voluntourism? I sort of
It's described as like when you're supposed to be volunteering, and I think people see it more so in like exotic places, but you're put on the front that you're volunteering, what you're mostly do there to explore the area.
They always seem to be at the beach.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, I did not realize there were that many orphanages built on beachfronts. Right. So volunteerism, I'm not saying it's totally bad. That's not at all what I'm saying. But it's missing some key components of immersion. Any kind of training and thought process ahead of time. It's kind of like a sign-up thing, right? You're not doing it often in community with others, okay? And there's not that idea of like, how do I bring this home? What is the now what, right? It's something that I'm just doing, but it's not about who I'm becoming, okay? Study tour. Anybody been on one, heard of them? Alumni associations often offer a lot of study tours. I went to that other Catholic school in Indiana, and they send these pamphlets about study tours all the time, right? So like the last one I got was like, and I'm like, the pamphlet I get must cost like $15. It's unreal, like color pictures. And they always sound so enticing, and then the price tag is like $14,000, you know, whatever. But a study tour is also an important part of our travel world, okay? But you're going usually to disparate sites that might have some common linkage. They're all in Russia, you know? And often you're going with an expert, you know, Professor Patrick Gaffney will lead you on a study tour of all of the famous Gaelic sites in Northern Ireland. Awesome, that's great, but it's not immersion, okay? It's not immersion, okay? An immersion experience is not vacation. Are there moments where you might actually feel unbelievably rested because you are in such a safe and welcoming environment? Absolutely. Are there moments on your immersion where you're gonna feel so tired, you've never been so tired in your entire life? Yes, right? But it's not a vacation. It's not just a trip. That's what part of this training is really about today, is getting beyond that, even that nomenclature of trip. Because a trip is defined in dates. An immersion is an experience that you have no idea when it's going to be kind of nurtured out of you. One of the best parts about being the co-leader for the Peru faculty staff Magis immersion experience, so we piloted it this past summer. I'm sure this happens to you guys as trip leaders. You see people on campus, right, who were on your immersion experience, and they come running up to me, you know, and they're like, oh my God, you're never gonna believe the connection I made, you know, and it's months later, right? You never know. Like, I still think of the immersion experiences I had in college, right? You never know when those seeds are gonna blossom, right? So it's way beyond the trip, the dates of the trip. It's everything that happens pre, and it's all the stuff that happens post, most of which, as leaders, you probably will never know. That's one of the hardest things about being an educator, right? Is you never know when those seeds are gonna blossom, right? It's more than just spring break. When I hear spring break, I kind of think like, oh, where are you going on spring break, right? It's not just about going to a place, it's about being, right? And it's more than experience because it always has learning attached to it. So I just wanted to kind of give you that overview of immersion as someone who likes to think about these things, can. Other people might do a totally different presentation, so that's why I think it's really important to talk to a lot of people about this. Any comments, questions, burning desires before I show you some pictures from our Peru immersion? It's a Magis immersion. We had 8 faculty and staff, myself, Father Kevin O'Brien, and Amanda Monroe from the CSJ as kind of our coordinator. Our main partner was the Jesuit University in Lima. It's called UARM. La Ruiz is also how they call it. So great to partner with them. They're only 12 years old. So you have Georgetown, the 1789 school, partnering with this very new Jesuit university. Oh, it was wild, right? And the idea behind this immersion is that our faculty and staff get to understand the Jesuits, literally, who were they, what did they do, in a very different context than Georgetown. So for 10 years we went to Kenya, and now we're going to Peru. And the idea being that if you experience the Jesuits and Ignatian practices in a different place, you get to know Georgetown and your work in a new way, right? It's about kind of disrupting what you think you know about somebody, or literally something, and seeing it in a different space. Okay, so this was actually the Jesuit Cathedral in Lima. Has anyone been to Lima? Studied further, anybody? These are Amanda's photos, so I don't remember seeing that mural, but obviously it spoke to her. This was in the National Library of Peru, and they had, these books are hundreds of years old, written by the first Jesuits who came to Peru in the late 1500s, documenting what Peru was like, who were the people, what was going on. It was unbelievable to see them this up close and personal, and people like were drinking bottles, like glasses of water, and I was like having panic attacks because I was worried something was going to happen to them. We went to kind of a barrio on the hillside in Lima, and we visited a lot of, again, Jesuit nonprofits and kind of Jesuits, like spin-off organizations of Jesuit parishes, that are offering wraparound services. So not just Catholic, they're not just the Catholic Church, they're offering health services, education services, all of these things in some of these locations. This was a really important stop for us for many reasons, but because we were in Lima and then also went to the countryside outside of Cusco, it really helped us understand what the Jesuits were doing outside in the countryside of Cusco, where they're helping people not migrate, to stay home. And Diana Gillespie, you guys know her, Dr. Diana Gillespie from the CSJ, she was on our trip, she's Peruvian, and she's an immigration scholar, so I learned so much, and my whole conception of migration and immigration was really affected by seeing both of these locations. A place where Jesuits are really supporting people because they did move, but then witnessing what Jesuits were doing in a place where people are struggling to stay home and make sustainable lives where they are. We had Mass on several occasions. This was in an alum's house. They had their own chapel. Amazing, right? So this is in the mountains. This is 15,000 feet. So talk about being exhausted. I've been at this altitude before and did not realize how much it affects your sleeping. I swear to God, I didn't sleep for 3 days. So do you guys recognize anybody from Georgetown? So Father Kevin, Mike Lorenzen from Athletics, serves on our APSA, and Guhul, Head of Residence Life. Dr. Diana Gillespie, Audrey Stewart is our Sustainability Officer. Jeff Reed, MSB, Entrepreneurship. Father Dejo was our fearless Capitan from the university there. Maggie Moore works in communications. Amanda Monroe from CSJ, me. Adilma Yearwood, she's an NHS professor. And Uwe Brandis is an SCS professor. Machu Picchu, it was great. This was at the library. Oh, well, it was delicious, that's all I have to say. It was goofy, many times goofy. This is a small school that the community built. Asked the Jesuits for support. The community came to them. This is Thomas Sharp. He graduated from JUPS in 2012. He was an international JV Jesuit Volunteer Corps for 2 years and now is working at the university in Lima there, one of my students. We had an event with the Georgetown Club of Peru. This is the idea where the people were showing us how the Jesuits were helping them live where they were, right, in more sustainable, effective, clean, hygienic, ways that supported their livelihood. I had to. I mean, this is great. When you get to see a picture of Father Kevin with llamas or beautiful churches and cathedrals. Guinea pigs are a specialty in Peru. Did you guys know that? Yeah. Machu Picchu. So that's it. So I apologize, ADB board. I know I went way over my time. I hope it was worthwhile. So thank you for having me, guys. And most importantly, just want to say you know how to find me. So I'm in the CSJ. Happy to talk to any of you any time, whether it's about immersion as a philosophy or all of that, or it's about your particular trip and you're looking for community partners in New York or DC, or you're looking for some new readings, or you're looking for a deeper understanding of the difference between Jesuit and Ignatian or whatever, okay? Thanks, I know Saturday morning's tough.